Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and coming up on today's show, we're going to be looking at some Raiders surprise roster candidates after the 2025 NFL Draft. These 10 players aren't projected to make my initial 53-man roster, and I ranked them from least to most surprising. So the person that you're going to see at 10 is going to be the least surprising guy to make the 53. The guy at number 1, I would say, is the most surprising out of the 10 players to make it. If you did not see my 53-man roster projection video, this video is going to be down in the comments and in the description of today's show. So all 10 players that you were going to see, I did not have here. And if you're like, well, where is a guy like Amari Gaynor? He's not on this show. Why? Because I think he ends up making the roster. Let's go to number 10 here on the show, and I'll be real with you. A lot of people probably have Charles Snowden making the 53-man. I left Snowden off my initial 53-man because of the court case on July 22nd, and I just don't really want to have a headache around this situation. So because of that, I decided to keep Andre Carter over Snowden. But, let's be real. Do I think that Snowden has a better than a 50% chance to make this roster? Yes, I do. He proved to be a valuable asset last season due to all the injuries that this team had. 39 tackles. He is a well-liked and respected player in that locker room. I am telling you, and he had one unfortunate situation that I know about, and it is kind of a little bit of a cloudy situation, but when you got a brand new regime in John Spytek and Pete Carroll, you don't want to have any cloudy situations leading up right before you're getting ready to get down to business and training camp. And the fact that it's July 22nd, maybe the Raiders did that on purpose. That way they know what exactly is going to happen with Snowden. But out of all the names that you see on this show, probably the least surprising name is Snowden. Let's go to number 9 here, and it's going to be Thomas Harper. And at safety, I don't know what the safety room is necessarily going to look like. And if this team decides to keep 4, 5, 6 safeties, maybe Harper, has got a shot to make it. But we got to be able to give him some credit. Last season, I thought he did pretty damn good in terms of being able to cover. And that's what I'm looking for from a free safety. We need to have a proven free safety that can cover. And I know that Harper's not a proven guy, but do I have more confidence in Harper to play center field than I do Isaiah Pola-Mao? Maybe. But I don't really have a lot of confidence in Isaiah Pola-Mao. Quite frankly, there isn't a single safety on this roster that I believe is starting free safety caliber in the National Football League. Does Patrick Graham, does Pete Carroll deserve a lot of love for some of the work they've done with some DBs? Yes, absolutely. And you're going to see a lot of versatility being used. But because Harper is one of our better safety guys, yes, it was an old regime, but because he showed last season some promise, you can't deny that. He showed some promise last season. Because he showed that, I wonder if that's a reason why maybe they end up keeping him on a 53-man. Let's go to number 8 here. It's going to be Sam Webb. And I know Webb has been able to stick around on this Raiders roster for a few seasons, back with McDaniels, with AP Telesco. And when you're able to be a practice squad guy and you're able to kind of stick around for as long as what Webb has had to do, you know that that's a player that goes out there and does the right things. He just doesn't have the athletic ability of a lot of these other players. Now, Webb, from a build standpoint, 6'2", 195. He's long, he's lanky, doesn't quite have the length for somebody that is usually 6'2", and doesn't have the athletic ability that I think that this regime's looking for from DBs. But there is a lot of unknown and unproven faces in this secondary, and if Webb can prove that he can play in the nickel, that's how he makes this squad. We don't need an outside corner. If Webb can prove that he is a good nickel option, he's got a legit shot to make this 53-man. Now, this is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. I want you to name a sleeper on the Raiders who you think is going to surprise people this season. Maybe it's somebody that I mentioned in this show. Maybe it's somebody that I don't mention in this show. But coming up after this YouTube ad break, we're going to keep this show going. And while that ad is playing, please go down and answer the pinned comment. Let's go to number 7 here. It's going to be Chris Smith entering the final year of his contract. And I would say the reason why he could make it is because of the leadership characteristics that he has, and also just the way that he is regarded in that locker room. He's a glue guy. And I know we haven't seen too much about Smith on the field, but he was a captain. He was a very well-respected player at Georgia. And he doesn't have the talent to be a consistent player in the NFL. But if Pete Carroll wants a guy that goes out there and competes, Chris Smith is going to do that. And because the safety room is very thin, He could end up making it. He could not. He's number 7 on this list. Let's go to another Georgia Bulldog, and it's going to be Zamir White at the running back position. I can't quite figure out why the Raiders would keep Zeus, but, Zamir White, when he's confident, he can run with some aggression. And if Zamir looks like the running back that we saw at the back end of 2023, I get it. Very, very different running systems, very different schemes in general. But I do sit back and I wonder, how much of the Zamir White struggles were also due to, Gardner Minshew being terrible, to Luke Getsy being terrible, to that offensive line being just downright atrocious. Zamir doesn't have good running vision. That is a cold, hard fact. But what happens if Sincere McCormick isn't ready to go come week 1? Or is this going to be a team that relies on a Dylan Laube, a Chris Collier? Yes, Laube has some connections, and he's got that New Hampshire connection also to Chip Kelly, and Chip Kelly was a New Hampshire dude. But this is a team that, despite drafting Genty, Raheem Mostert, they're going to keep 4 running backs. And if McCormick is not 100% healthy, then I could see this team potentially trying to keep Zamir. Though, I'd almost make the argument, if you got to rely on Zamir White, you might just be better off going out than trying to get a whole nother running back on the open market. Before we get into our top 5 surprise roster candidates, if you're looking to get your hands on a Raiders jersey, go to chatsports.com/Raiders jerseys. If you're looking to get your hands on an Ashton Genty jersey, I know Genty picked out the number 2. This is just the placeholder jersey that we got from the NFL draft because he was the Raiders' first-round pick. That's why it says number 1. If you order the jersey by going to chatsports.com/Genty or chatsports.com/Raiders jerseys, don't worry, it'll be a Genty number 2 jersey. Let's go to number 5 here on our list. It's going to be Mello Dotson, cornerback from Kansas. And this is really where I would say, we're starting to get into that more surprise area. Dotson, I was kind of surprised he went undrafted. And, he led the Kansas Jayhawks in terms of interceptions returned for a touchdown throughout a career. 4 years of starting, 49 tackles, 5 interceptions, 6 PBUs. And I know that the Jayhawks weren't really considered a good football program, but from 2021 over the past few seasons, this has been a team that's gotten better and better. And I think Dotson deserves a lot of credit, and a lot of those Jayhawks players deserve credit for being able to take a program and actually turning it into something. And because of that, I do think that that's one of those lower level items that this regime is going to be looking at is I want guys that have been there and done that. And I want guys that have been able to show that they can change a locker room. And I understand that college football is much different from the NFL, but this is going to be a very open cornerback battle. And if Dotson goes out there and outshines a dude like the Camryn Richardson, I think Dotson could take that job. Let's go to number 4 here. It's going to be Tyreik McCallister. Whether you want to list him as a running back, whether you want to list him as a wide receiver, I listed him here as a running back because I don't really think that he makes the roster as a wide receiver, but what this Raiders team values is versatility. And because you look at a guy like Tommy Mellott, great athlete who they drafted, wide receiver quarterback, Tyreik McCallister also brings speed. And this team values speed. They value athletes. And maybe they want to line up McCallister in the punt return and the kick return game. But maybe they also want to use him as somebody like a gadget player at running back if McCormick's down, if Zamir White's unable to go, and you just have McCallister as just having that extra dude. On top of that, though, he does have a connection with some of the Raiders special teams coaches, and because he has such a connection with some of these special teams coaches, that could just be the underlining reason of him making the roster compared to somebody like Zamir White who offers you nothing in terms of special teams. Let's go to number 3 here. It's going to be Zach Carter at defensive tackle. Showed some bright spots last season, I thought, for the Raiders on a very, very banged-up defensive line. And I know that we got Patrick Graham, Rob Leonard, and this Raiders team went out and they drafted Tonka Hemingway. They went out, they drafted J.J. Pegues. You go out and you sign Lucky Fotu. There's a lot of depth to be had here. But I was told this probably last week, and I think I said it on the Raiders Report show, that this could be a team that they might only keep a few defensive ends and decide, you know what, we got a bunch of DTs that offer us a lot of versatility, and we're going to try to keep more defensive tackles on this roster. For a dude that had 22 tackles, I don't anticipate that he makes this squad, but it might only take a injury. And I know Matthew Butler was a player that was drafted. Zach Carter has a much better chance to make the Raiders roster than somebody like Matthew Butler. That I can flip and promise you. Before we get into our top 2 players that could make the team, but it would be the biggest surprise, if you don't know, we are giving away an Ashton Genty jersey. The 2 ways that you can enter, you can either send in a $5 super chat while we are live, or you can send in a super thanks to be entered if you're too busy or if you're unable to join our live shows. Winner is going to be announced Friday, May 30th. If you're like, Mitch, what the hell is a super thanks? If you go on your phone, this is what it would look like. If this is like underneath a Raiders video, see this button right here? Click that bad boy. It's going to look just like a super chat. $5 super thanks. You're ready to rock and roll. If you use YouTube or when you watch the show, if you do that on your desktop, this is how it's going to look. You'd have to click those 3 little buttons up over there next to share. You're going to get a drop-down menu. You click on super thanks, and then you're ready to rock and roll. I know not everybody is tech savvy. Hell, I'm not tech savvy. The only thing I'm tech savvy with is YouTube. For people that did get into our Genty Super Thanks raffle, at least since last Friday or Thursday, Truman, Richard, Jimmy Willis, Anthony, Nick Rossman, and 916 Raider, y'all are in. So right now as it stands, we have 15 people in due to Super Thanks and a lot more to do to Super Chats. Appreciate everyone who always tunes in. But I wanted to give people the opportunity who don't always have the ability to watch this show live, participate in some of the giveaways that we do here on the Raiders Report. Let's go to number 2 here on our surprise roster candidates. It's going to be Jah Joyner, edge rusher, UDFA from Minnesota. And for a guy like Joyner, 32 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles last season, in college, this was a player that we had ranked in our top 200. This is a dude that I thought was going to go in the top 5th, maybe like 6th round area. And because of the unknowns, let's just call it, at edge with a guy like Tyree Wilson, with a guy like Charles Snowden, if I'm the Raiders and I want to take a Maxx Crosby, a Malcolm Kuntz, a Tyree Wilson, and then I also want to be able to keep one of these younger players, maybe they decide to keep Joyner. I mean, I know that the Raiders value defensive line play, and if Joyner's able to show that he's a good enough athlete, because that's probably the biggest question mark right now around him. He did generate 31 pressures, though, in 2024, was able to generate 46 pressures in 2023. Anytime you're a UDFA, you got to be able to put on the motor, and you got to be able to go out there and do your thing. I don't think it's a great chance that he makes it, but there is at least a chance. To me, though, the most surprising roster candidate that does have a shot to make it, I'm going to go with Jailin Walker, linebacker, UDFA. He played for Indiana last season, and he had 82 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. But this is maybe not so much about Jailin Walker compared to more about this Raiders linebacking room. And, last offseason, we kept 7 linebackers on our 53-man because there was just a lot of question marks around who's going to make the roster and who's not going to make the roster. But for a guy like Walker, he didn't get a lot of opportunities to show that he could cover, and that's probably just because of Big Ten football. But when he was given the opportunity, I thought that he did a halfway decent job. He had 8 pass breakups, 2 interceptions for the Indiana Hoosiers last season. But then again, if he's able to go out there in camp and show that he is a reliable player, and a reliable player just in terms of coverage ability on top of special teams, that's how he makes this roster. And I know that he transferred from James Madison. He was at Madison the 2 years before that. He might have even been at Madison the 3 years before that, but I think it was definitely 2 years, in 2023 and 2022. And Walker was one of the players, and I know there was a lot of players from JMU that ended up transferring to Indiana, and I can't think of what the Indiana head coach's name. Say it again? Signetti, that's it. Thanks, Chugs. And, when you think about a head coach that gets a new job, he takes certain players that he wants to go with him. So the fact that Signetti got a bump up from JMU to go to Indiana, and he decided to take Jailin Walker with him, I'm always a believer that when you see coaches do that, and it's a little bit easier now with the NIL, a little bit easier with the transfer portal, but that's important. And I think the Raiders noticed that, and I would say that Walker is one of the better UDFA linebackers across the entire NFL. So because of the need, because of the fit, because of his athletic ability, I think Jailin Walker could be a player that might make the roster that wasn't on my initial 53-man. Appreciate all y'all tuning in again. If I missed anybody during our live show, or if there is a player that you're like, dude, I don't know how you left this guy off the list, hit me up on IG or on Twitter. I'm at Mitchell Renz 365, and if you want to take a screenshot of my surprise roster candidates, and if you want to yell at me, all I ask is this. at least go check out my 53-man roster video. That way you know which players I think are going to make it and which players aren't going to make it, because there's definitely some names that I wanted to put on this show, but I was like, well, if I project them to be on my 53-man, I don't really know if they could be a surprise roster candidate. Appreciate all y'all tuning in. Can't wait for this season, and I can't wait for Raiders rookie minicamp, which starts May 9th.